but my parents did not like wrestling at all. My dad was very upset when I did start to get into wrestling in like 98. And it was like Austin McMahon was the big storyline. I would watch in the basement, and I would do that trick where when you heard your dad coming down the stairs, you would flick really quick, and like all of a sudden the Maple Leafs game was on.
Yeah.
Oh, I just been watching the game. They're winning right now. And then there'd be a couple times it's like, I know you're watching wrestling in here, and you shouldn't be watching that. And yeah, you're right. He thought that some of the women were dressed like it was porn.
This guy's called the Standing Streamer.
From Wrestling with Regret, and you're watching Putting You Over.
Damn it. I never turned on the Zoom room. That's all right. I'm a little nervous about tonight. I mean, this Mr. Van Vliet is a top-notch guy. Although, as I was preparing for the show, which reminds me, make sure I have my question. This is what I've been doing. I'm making sure I'm saving all of my notes from now on after that last debacle. But he seems... I haven't actually seen a ton of his interviews. Like, I knew of him, and I may have caught one here or there. But I never really caught many of them. And when I was prepping today, like, he seemed so laid back and, like... I'm hoping he's easy to talk to. He seemed easy to talk to. Should be interesting.
Yeah. My friend Beef put me on to him because he watches him all the time. And he's like, you got to check this guy out. So then I started watching him. So then he was hyping him up hard. Yeah, so then his DMs were open. So I was like, well,
why not?
I'm going to go in there. I'm going to slide in.
Slide into his DMs.
And you know what got me in? I'm Canadian.
Yeah, that's I see. I'm no fool. Not only is Vanessa extremely knowledgeable about wrestling and enjoys watching it, and her husband enjoys watching it, and they go to indie shows. Not only do they have that in their back pocket, but she's a female. She talks better to people than I do. She's Canadian. So, I mean, look at the amazing Canadian wrestlers we've had on. I would have never, ever known any of them. Tyler Turva was great to have. Tyson Dukes was fun. Who else did we have that was up there in Canada?
Fun fact, did you see Tyson Dukes post on Twitter
yeah.
that he wrestled Matt Hardy in Matt Hardy's first ever match in the WWE?
I did see that. I don't know how I missed that. I don't know how I couldn't have crowbarred that into the interview submissions. So we'll have Van Vliet here in under 5, we hope. Switch up. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up?
Oh, what's up with you?
How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I just have to walk around the phenomenal bar here and switch and pin the video on the Zoom so you stay, so your beautiful face does not move.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. We're watching. I was just finishing up Impact.
Oh yeah, EC3 appeared at the end there, right?
What's that?
EC3 was on there at the end.
Yeah, he was. I missed his promo at the start, so I'll have to go back and listen to that. Eric Young had a nice promo tonight.
Nice.
Saying
I'm interviewing him tomorrow.
Excellent, because he was on tonight saying, Eddie Edwards has his championship and he's due the championship, and Edwards is lucky that Eric Young didn't single him out at Slammiversary. So it was good, and it's good to see him back. I know my brother sent me a text on Saturday night. EY's back in TNA. I'm gonna have to start watching.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's Impact, but I get what you're saying.
We can call it TNA. It's what everyone else calls it. I mean, we get it.
But don't you think like TNA, although it had some great years, like don't you think the fact that we're still calling it TNA is not helping Impact progress, although it's doing?
Of course not. But
Right?
they sat on the fence with whether it was going to be called TNA or Impact Wrestling in 2011-12, and they weren't sure.
Yeah.
And then I feel like people lost interest after that.
And it was TNA Impact for a while too.
Yes.
From the
it was
Impact Zone.
The Impact Zone. That's right.
Everything's
oh my gosh.
Everything's an Impact. But they've been doing great stuff, especially during these tough times. Not only did they have stuff backlogged because, they tape, but they're like the promotion you forget about, and that's doing great. Them and MLW was doing awesome too.
Yeah. I think the only problem with Impact is that not enough people can see it. It's the only problem. Not enough people know where to get it.
That's right. And Slammiversary was, I believe, and you probably know better than I do, was trending #1 on Twitter Saturday night. And so
that's the first time that Impact has trended, and I don't know how long, but it's the first time in a while.
And like I said, my brother, he's ready to jump back in. I had some other people, and they go, but I don't have Access TV. And I'm like, well, it's on Twitch. Like you can watch it on Twitch. All their shows, weekly shows, same time. And they're like, oh, but that's still hard too. It's even hard to explain to people like there's stuff on Twitch that's not gaming, and it's just hard to get people to see that. But
well, it's a strange time right now because
weird.
Most of us aren't watching TV like we used to.
No.
And I don't just mean a strange time with the quarantine. It's a strange time is like, millions and millions of people used to watch Raw.
Yep.
Now barely 2 million watch it.
Yeah. It's weird. I'm 40 years old, just turned 40. I grew up Attitude Era time, Monday Night Wars, right in the mix of things. And I remember with appointment TV sitting down. And now, like today's day and age, with not just wrestling, like you said, TV in general.
Yeah.
I have 3 daughters, and they don't even understand. I tried to explain to them, like, they'll binge watch a show, and they'll be a 2-parter. And I'll try to say to them, well, you don't even understand. Like, you're just going to let that little timer go off and watch the next episode. I would have had to wait a week. Maybe not. Maybe they'd push it.
Or if you went on vacation, you would have to set your VCR and hope that you came back, you'd maybe be able to watch the show. And I think that's why people don't watch wrestling or any other show as it's on TV now, because if something big happens, I know I'm going to see it on my Twitter feed.
That's right.
I'm going to see it on Instagram. Whereas in 1999, when something big happened, that was it. You were never seeing that thing again.
So, ratings, like the ratings, everyone talks about the ratings that come out. Are they even that important anymore?
Well, the rating system, without getting into some like larger discussion, is so skewed.
Yeah.
Like it's so skewed how this works. Like basically one person that happens to have a Nielsen rating box in their house, which is like, so bizarre. I've never known anyone to own one. They represent 10,000 people watching TV.
Wow.
So it doesn't really make sense to begin with. But to answer your question, ratings do matter because that's where the ads are sold.
Yeah. Yep. It's interesting. So I was doing a lot of research on you. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen a lot of your interviews wrestling wise. I've caught a couple, and no reason. I mean, I just must not have hit the circles in my household. Too busy watching Fuller House. I don't know. But so when I did some research, and you had a great quote. You had vague goals get you vague responses. And I thought that was great. I wrote that at the top of my notes here. And it's just, you could set like you do YouTube channel. And I think you said, you can say, well, I want to grow my YouTube channel. But if you get one new subscriber, that's growing your channel. Like you broke it down as set specific goals and stuff like that. And I just thought that was so pertinent and insightful and anything. Would you like to comment on that at all? Or?
Well, that phrase changed my life.
Yeah.
Because I think that far too many people set these really vague goals in their life and you end up getting vague results from it. So I think it's important to set, like, I would say the bronze, silver, and gold medal goals.
There you go. It's like a video game.
Going, what's achievable in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah.
What's achievable in the next 6 to 12 months? What's achievable in the next 5 to 10 years? And I think that it's really important. And so many of us don't do this. We don't celebrate the little wins along the way.
Yeah.
We just look at like this big thing of like, I want to, I don't know, buy a house or something. And you don't celebrate the little wins along the way to make that thing happen. And I think that it's just so depressing to think of things in that way. So I think if you could live your life with gratitude and have gratitude for all the things that you get to do throughout your life, I think that the way that you live your life will just be lived on that much better of a level, because you'll be so thankful and grateful for the things that you have in your life.
Yeah. You think people are afraid to fail, and that's why they don't set, quote unquote, those specific goals?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that everybody fails.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality.
That's how you get better at things, really. That's what
it's not winning or losing.
Yeah.
It's winning or learning. And I think people are scared to fail because they think that if they fail, then that makes them a failure.
Yes.
And a lot of people, when they set a goal and they don't achieve it, they'll never try again. And I think that that's obviously not the right way to do things. Set a goal, chase after it, be accountable to that goal. If you want to lose weight, for example, tell a few of your good friends, family members, your husband, your wife, tell them, I want to lose 20 pounds. So next time they see you shoving ice cream in your face, it could be like, I thought you said you wanted to lose weight. And then you're accountable for this specific goal now.
That's right. Yeah, that is so pertinent to my life. I do with my shoot job, which I'm trying to crowbar in as a new phrase. My shoot job, I use that with my students, and then my kids. I hold them accountable for a lot of things. And as a teacher, it's I can do it more easily. As a father, I feel really bad sometimes when I make my kids feel accountable, because it's usually for something they're not doing. They want to do, but they're not. And
well, I mean, I can't speak to that. I don't have any kids of my own. I just have a niece and nephews. But I think that it's important when one of your friends says, man, I've really been wanting to work out more.
Yeah.
Maybe ask them to join the gym with you. Maybe ask them to go with you. Like, be accountable. Like, hey man, you were up. I saw you on Twitter last night at 1 a.m. Of course you didn't go to gym in the morning. You were too tired from being up on Twitter. Just, and not in a mean way. Just be like, hey man, I got your back.
Yeah, I think that's good. Before I want to jump into at least how you got started in the early days and this and that. But the first thing I want to say is, were you voted the hottest Cleveland bachelor? And
I was.
And go ahead, you can comment.
Well, I was voted America's. Yeah, I was Cosmopolitan's Bachelor of the Year.
Yep, that one I knew.
For the entire magazine in 2011, with the shirtless photo of me on the beach and everything.
Wow. And
I own that issue, sir, just so you know.
Oh, wow.
We were talking about that earlier. That's Vanessa, who you probably know.
Hi, Vanessa.
Now you know her. Yeah, but I had it written down for some reason. I did have the Cosmo thing. I had it written down. Says Inside Edition voted hottest Cleveland Bachelor, and then I wrote.
I actually came number 2 in that one. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, who beat you? The Miz? Was he a bachelor then?
I don't even remember. I don't remember the guy's name who won that. It was so strange. I moved to Cleveland.
That's weird.
In March of 2010, and I loved. So that was the first place I moved after I left Canada. I was hosting a show in Toronto on Sun TV, which was great. And then I had an opportunity to be the entertainment reporter for the CBS affiliate in Cleveland, which was an incredible, huge opportunity and a big step up from what I was doing on the station that I was on. I mean, I went to the Oscars like my third day of work, which was crazy. Wow. It was on the Oscars red carpet covering the Oscars. But like 6 weeks into my job, one of the guys in the promo department goes, Inside Edition's coming to town and you're going to be part of some like hottest bachelor thing. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, when's this? Thinking like, I'll have time to like prepare and stop eating pizza. And they're like, oh, it's in 2 days. I'm like, what? Yeah, you and some other guys. I don't know anything about it, but you're gonna be, taking photos with your shirt off. I'm like, oh, I am not ready. Because when I first moved to America, when I first moved to Cleveland, I was all in on American food. And as a Canadian, you can appreciate this. When you go to America, you're all about like Texas Roadhouse and Cheesecake Factory and Applebee's. And at the time, KFC had just created the Double Down, which was a chicken sandwich. And instead of having buns, it had chicken as the buns. Yep. So you were doubling down on your chicken. So I've been eating all this great food, like enjoying my new city. And now I had to take my shirt off. And people voted and I ended up coming second. But then I got my redemption a year later when Cosmopolitan did this same thing. And it was like one guy from every single state, was nominated. And I was the Ohio representative. They flew us all to New York City. And then I got crowned the Bachelor of the Year. I won a $10,000 check. I won $10,000, which I donated to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Cleveland. So it was really win-win for everybody.
Everyone wins. So I want to jump back to you're a huge wrestling fan. Huge. From what I've learned. Lifelong. Yeah. What's your first wrestling memory? And if it's not your dad comparing wrestling to porn, then I'm going to be disappointed.
My first wrestling memory is late 80s. It would just be on at my grandparents' house.
Yeah.
And my grandpa wasn't like a huge wrestling fan, still isn't like a huge wrestling fan, but Saturday night, just be flicking channels and it happened to be on. And that's when I was like in love with the larger than life characters, Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. And then like Coco Beware, Repo Man. That was my first kind of exposure to it. And we would just kind of watch it whenever I was at his house. Then in high school, so we're talking late 90s now.
Yep.
I was on the wrestling team. And of course, when you're on the wrestling team and you're doing the real wrestling, as your coach will tell you, that stuff on TV is the fake wrestling and you shouldn't be watching that. So I kind of bought into that. Like we were doing amateur wrestling was, legit. And what we saw on TV was so fake and we couldn't have done any. That was the funny thing. You can't actually do any pro wrestling moves in an amateur like setting. Like very few of them would actually be.
Yeah. Not many at all. Suplexes.
But my parents did not like wrestling at all. My dad was very upset when I did start to get into wrestling in like 98. And it was like Austin McMahon was the big storyline. I would watch in the basement and I would do that trick where when you heard your dad coming down the stairs, you would flick really quick and like all of a sudden the Maple Leafs game was on.
Yeah.
Oh, I just been watching the game. They're winning right now. And then there'd be a couple times he's like, I know you're watching wrestling. You shouldn't be watching that. And yeah, you're right. He thought that some of the women were dressed like it was porn.
Well, at that time, women wrestling was a lot different at that time. So
yeah, and I don't know that if I had a 15-year-old son, that I would want him watching that show either. Like I understand where he was coming from, but I also think now, in hindsight, it's probably what made me like it more. Oh, you don't want me watching this? Well, guess what? I'm going to watch this.
So, big wrestling fan, larger than life characters. You get through that awkward stage of watching, wrestling in the basement. You're an amateur wrestler. Can you tell us a little bit who Chris Sharp is?
At that same time when I was watching and my parents weren't enjoying this, look, every time any kid goes on a trampoline and they're a wrestling fan, you're giving each other Stone Cold Stunners and DDTs and at the time rock bottoms. Yeah. So we were doing that and we were like film these little clips of it. And it turned out a friend of a friend had a backyard wrestling company called the HCW. And I was so excited to actually do this in front of a handful of people, like 6 or 7 people that would be there. Although we had the pay-per-view events, I think we had like 60, 70 people in my friend's backyard.
Did you sell
Chris
tickets?
Sharp was my character. He was very inspired by Triple H. Like I taped the one hand and then taped the wrist on the other. I cut very intense heel promos, and looking back now, it's so funny to watch. But yeah, that was, and my goal was I was going to be a pro wrestler. I was going to go to college, and then either at some point during college or some point after college, I was going to train. I was going to go to wrestling school, and I was going to make this thing happen. And I did, in fact, go to wrestling school during the summer of my second year of university. I went to Wilfrid Laurier University. And during my second year, I was driving from Pickering, where I was living, to Toronto, where Squared Circle was. It's like an hour-ish drive. And wrestling school is 4 days a week. And wrestling school is $250 a month. And, it's a commitment. Like, it's a legit school. And I just wasn't at that time committed to that being my schooling. I still wanted to actually, get my communications degree, which I did, my Bachelor of Arts degree. And I just kind of came to a fork in the road where I needed to decide, like, which one am I going to give my all to? Is it school, or is it, wrestling school? And I figured I could always come back to wrestling school. And I've been really fortunate with how this worked out, because I've been able to, I graduated from college, got my communications degree, been able to work as a broadcaster, and then, kind of dip my toe into the world of wrestling every now and then just retreat and go back to the broadcasting world.
It's funny because I was prepping for you, and so I listened to some old podcasts, and you started off by saying, I actually have a day job. Like this interviewing wrestlers thing is not my job. This is what I do for fun. So we're going to push this out to YouTube as well, but we are live on Twitch. For the people that may not know, what is your actual day job at this moment?
So I've been a TV host for the last 15 years. That's my job. And it was funny that I would do this, I was doing the YouTube stuff and the podcast, which has been so great. And people wouldn't realize that I had a background in broadcasting. They just thought that I was a full-time YouTuber. I will say now I'm definitely doing a lot more YouTube than I ever have. I'm doing some freelance stuff. I'm also been doing some acting. So I would say and I also own a fishing company called Tungsten. Tungsten. So I'd say I don't have one job anymore, but up until the end of last year, I was Monday to Friday. If you turned on the TV in the city that I lived in, you could see me on TV.
Yeah. You're like a jack of all trades.
I just, I've been kind of following my passion, which has led me, I just moved to Los Angeles last week. And I know that this is where TV hosting happens. I know that this is where acting happens. This is the place I need to be living for this.
That's why Mr. Alba called you Hollywood. He was in the chat earlier.
Oh,
and he told us to tell him to take his In-N-Out burger and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. And I can't remember, Hollywood Boy or something. And I'm like,
well, I do like In-N-Out. I mean, who doesn't?
Right?
In-N-Out burgers.
And
I don't think I've ever had In-N-Out. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, next time you're in California, Nevada, or New Mexico, you need to get some. I think there might be one or two other places that you can find it.
So as soon as you can get over the border, Vanessa, you should go straight to an In-N-Out place. Chasing your passion. And you mentioned something earlier that I didn't want to skip over. You are big into fishing, bass fishing specifically.
Yes. Yeah.
You entered tournaments from like age of 14 to who knows, all the way up to probably still going.
Look at you doing your research.
I did do my
you.
research.
Wow.
And so I don't know much about fishing. I know Vanessa knows more. You've entered a ton of tournaments. You do have tungsten. The only thing I know about tungsten is I knew it was a metal because that's what my wedding ring is made of. Hardest metal on earth.
Yep. Very dense metal.
Very
By
dense.
the way, which city are you in?
I'm in upstate New York. I'm in Albany.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Actually, I've done a lot of tournaments in upstate New York.
I'm sure the fishing is where I actually grew up. I grew up 30 minutes north of Lake George, New York. So up there ain't much to do except have bonfires, drink beer, and fish.
Right.
Although I didn't really fish that much, but I did drink beer and play a lot of sports.
Lake Champlain. I fished many tournaments
Yeah.
on Lake Champlain out of Plattsburgh.
Yep.
So fishing was a passion of mine since I was a kid. We'd go up to our neighbor's cottage. That's a big thing when you live in Ontario, of like that. That's pretty much every weekend from May till, the end of summer. Is you go up to someone's cottage, and all the kids there were a few years older than me. I was 4 years old. My parents stuck me out on the end of a dock with a fishing rod and a worm, and I caught my first ever rock bass, and boom, I was hooked. Pun intended.
Pun intended. I was just going to say that.
And from there, it was just like, this was a thing that I love to do. And I honestly can't explain why I love it so much, but it was just a thing that I loved. And I would beg my dad to take me fishing, and he wasn't really that into fishing. He supported me when I was playing hockey and baseball. Like, he would play catch with me in the backyard. Even though he didn't like fishing, he would drive me down to Lake Ontario, which is where we lived like 5 minutes from Lake Ontario. He'd drive me down to Lake Ontario. I would fish for carp and catfish and pike. And it was just something that I always loved. And when I realized there was bass fishing tournaments in our area, I basically asked our neighbors who owned that cottage if they would do this fishing tournament with me. And I asked my parents if they would give me the entry fee for this tournament. The tournament was like $400 to enter. Could they pay that $200, my portion of the entry fee, because there's two people on a team, as my birthday present so I could fish this tournament? And that was where it all began. I was 14 years old. We only weighed one fish in that tournament. It was terrible. But that was where the love really began. Got old enough so that I could actually drive a car, and I didn't have to bike with my fishing rod, which is the thing I did for a long time. There was a river that backed onto our high school. I would bring a fishing rod, keep it in my locker, and fish during my lunch break, because the salmon would run behind my high school. Wow. So yes, I was very, very much into this. I've owned several bass boats. And when I was living in Florida up until last year, I lived pretty close to Lake Okeechobee, which is one of the best bass fishing lakes in the world. And I know this is a lot of bass fishing talk here, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing. And
we need more bass fishing talk, right?
It led to me starting the bass fishing company, Woo Tungsten, which has been such a fun thing to do. And I really realized I enjoy tapping into that entrepreneurial side of things.
Yeah. And you give reference to Flair with the name Woo Tungsten.
A little bit. So it's a secret reference to Flair for the wrestling fans who know it, but it's also, when you catch a giant fish, you are jacked up and you go, woo, yeah. So it's a little bit of that too.
What's the biggest fish you've caught?
So the biggest fish I've caught is a Goliath grouper, 480-pound Goliath grouper. Oh my
goodness.
I've posted videos and photos of this on my Instagram page. It's phenomenal. I mean, these fish they're the size of like your front door. So we actually made a TV segment out of that. I knew that there was a big population of them living on the west side of Florida on the Gulf Coast. And I went out with a fishing guide and a cameraman, and we made a segment where we caught it. And this was not rod and reel. This was hand lining it with rope.
Oh my goodness.
So shut the front door.
You know what that means, Vanessa?
Well, I know he's pulling it in hand over hand.
Okay.
Like, it was like tug of war with this thing. We were using a hook that was as big as your hand, tied directly to our anchor rope, dropped it down with some bait on it. And when this thing grabbed on, took two of us to like literally tug of war him into the boat.
Wow.
So is it like pulling up an old boot, or like
an old boot that is stronger than
weighs
both
400 pounds? That weighs 400 pounds, but like,
yeah, it's a boot that can swim and is super strong, and might even try to eat you. I don't know.
No, for sure. I know sometimes, like, right, you pull up a catfish and it's like reeling in an old boot, or you pull in a bass and it's jumping around and giving you a good time.
This thing fought more like a smallmouth bass. It kind of looks like a smallmouth bass too.
Huh. Wow, 480 pounds. Good Lord.
It was a beast.
Oh my goodness. So one of the things as I said, I'm getting ready for the show tonight, and that attracted me to your interviews. I was like, why have I never watched all these before? these are amazing. And one of the things I loved most about them was it was just like a conversation. Like it was just you and your friend sitting down at an In-N-Out burger talking. It didn't look like an interview to me. It was always different. It was always in a different place because you would literally travel to get these interviews, which it just goes to your work ethic, your passion. Like that's what attracted me to it when I started watching it. And so kudos to you because
oh well, thank you. And I think that's my broadcasting background. Like almost every interview we did was somewhere in person. Usually was in the city that you lived in, and that actor or director or musician was in town, and you and your cameraman went to the hotel or the venue or whatever, and you did the interview. And that was just ingrained in me that the interview was always that much better if you could shake their hand, look them in the eye, have that connection with them.
Yeah.
Rather than the option of doing it over the phone, or we'd have the option to do satellite interviews, which is, kind of what we're doing with these interviews nowadays. That's kind of what I've had to transition into. But I figured if I could fly to somewhere like a Las Vegas and Impact Wrestling was having a taping, which is what I did in January before COVID, and I can talk to 2 or 3 people and enjoy an Impact show and be in a new city. I mean, it's win, 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 win. It's win all around.
Let's do it.
So the interviewers that I always looked up to and the TV hosts that I always looked up to growing up were the people who weren't trying to speak to you like they were better than you, or weren't trying to like talk in a broadcasting voice. It was the people who made you, the viewer, feel comfortable and also made the guest feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that was just something that, and thank you for saying that that's what I do. Cause that's been a goal of mine ever since I started out, is I just wanted to have these conversations flow in a really natural way.
Yeah. I try to portray that and do that with the stuff I've been attempting to do on this Twitch show. And the more I watch of you, I'm like, man, I have so much to work on.
Oh my God. Well, I still have so much to do. I look back at some of these interviews and I'm like, oh, really? That's what
yeah. But
the way I look at it is it's a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So if you and I ran into each other at a party, we wouldn't go, okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is this. You would just flow with the conversation. Next thing you know, 20 minutes have passed.
Yeah. Just like that. That's what it's like. Really?
Right. And you never think about what you're going to ask next when you're on the phone with grandma or grandpa or something like that. And I think in the same way that when you're having a conversation, especially now that my interviews are closer to an hour in length, I'm basically going, I know I want to talk about these 5, 10, 15 topics or whatever. If it comes up naturally, great. We'll go down that road. If not, we'll figure out how we can talk about that topic. There's usually an opening.
Yeah. This is going off my script now. Do you have like your quote unquote bullet points in front of you, or do you memorize them? I mean, you said you're delving into acting, so I'm assuming you've done your research, you're memorizing them and then going with the flow. Oh, I remember I wanted to discuss this. He just brought it up. Let's go down that.
So if I know I'm doing an interview, like tomorrow, I know I'm interviewing Eric Young, I start to compile a list on my phone of like, oh yeah, that came to mind. I'll write that down. Like me and Eric Young go back almost 20 years. I went to his wrestling school.
Wow.
I almost attended his wrestling school. Quick little side story here. It was half an hour from my college town. I went to check it out like one night, just, take it like an orientation, see what's up. And one of his wrestlers broke their arm. And he's like, dude, this doesn't happen normally. I promise you. And the kid had to leave like this to go to the hospital. And I'm like, ooh, wow. Maybe I'll just hold off a little bit. So I obviously wrote that down in my notes of I definitely want to talk about that. And just other things. Like I watched a Slammiversary and he was there. So I wrote that down on my phone. And then tomorrow morning before I do the interview, I will physically write it out on paper. And there's something about that connection of your brain going to your hand, going to the paper, that imprints it into your brain that much more. Yeah. And then, yes, I will have it in front of me during the interview, but I don't know. I did an interview earlier today with Daniel Puder, and I only looked at the notes once because I specifically wrote down a quote that I wanted to read off to him. But I knew that, these were the 10 things we were going to talk about and they'd come up. There's a lot of times though, the interview ends and I grab my notes to, throw them out. And I'm like, that one, I forgot to ask about that thing. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I've done that a few times. Like, oh man, that wrestler loved Star Wars. I wrote it down. We could have done 20 minutes on Star Wars alone.
Right.
You mentioned EY, and EY had a show. I forget what network it was on, but it was like an outdoor nature.
Yeah, he had a fishing show.
Yeah, a fishing show, right? It was something down that lines. Yeah.
I wonder what it was. I can't remember. I'm gonna have to look this up. I can't remember what it was called, but I remember when he got that show, I was so happy for him and also so jealous of him because I had just auditioned for a fishing show or just been submitted for a fishing show to host a fishing show like a year before. And I'm like, oh man, Eric Young's getting this. Great for him, but I kind of wish I could be that guy.
Yeah, I remember that. It used to be, I can't remember the name of it either.
I'm going to look this up.
Go ahead.
I'm going to look this up while we keep talking here.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm very curious.
Are you still working for AEW?
Well, I've done a few things with them, but I was never
Officially,
on with them more than the few shows.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know how that worked.
I got to do that control room segment with them, which was so cool.
Yeah.
They asked me to be part of the very first episode of Dynamite, which as a wrestling fan, does it get any better than that?
No.
Like first time wrestling's on TNT in almost 20 years. First time WWE has competition in almost 20 years. And I got to be, a very small, minute part of that show, but
you're down in history. You're there.
Show, and that was so cool to be able to do that.
Well,
I just looked it up. The show is Off the Hook Extreme Catches.
I see. He had 3 seasons of that show. Good for him.
There you go. Jot that down. Yeah, bring that up.
Put that in the old note skis there.
There you go. You had gone on record saying that AEW is changing the game for better or worse. And I believe you had said this before, obviously it came out with Dynamite. Now that we have gone a long time, AEW's been on for a little bit. Do you feel it's changed it for better or for worse? Or is it too? Oh my God,
it's changed it for the better for sure.
Yeah.
2019 was such an exciting time for wrestling, both to be a wrestler and to be a wrestling fan. And what AEW did was they raised the bar. And that bar had either stayed the same or gotten lower because it's nothing wrong with WWE. They just didn't really have any competition. So AEW came in and made a mark. And you see this every single week now. Of course, they're changing it for the better. I mean, do you think we would have seen Great American Bash if AEW hadn't put a few pay-per-views on TV for free?
No, we would not have.
Do you think that NXT's cameras would be facing the entranceway if AEW didn't exist during COVID? No, of course not. It's been really interesting to watch that AEW does something or announces something, and NXT or WWE follows suit a few days or weeks later.
It's a chess game.
That's not to say that WWE's not doing interesting things. I don't think we would have had the stadium. What was it called? The
Stadium Stampede.
Stadium Stampede. We might not have had the Stadium Stampede if it wasn't for the Boneyard match. So I think that they're both feeding off of each other. And who's winning?
Yeah.
We're winning.
We're winning.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think we're going to see a lot more cinematic matches through different promotions. I mean, it's just coming off so well. I think people.
Well, I think there's a time and a place for it.
There is.
The Boneyard match worked because of how WrestleMania was this year and how it was structured without fans. But I mean, can you imagine if 80,000 people were sitting in that stadium in Tampa and all of a sudden we all had to look up at the screen to watch a match? That wouldn't have made any sense.
I don't even like going to a Raw and seeing a backstage segment.
And this is the thing. The crowd gets very restless when there's even a 2 or 3 minute segment on the Titantron. So while I agree that there will probably be more of these matches that will happen, I think that when the world gets back to normal or whatever normal ends up being, I think that they will be a very rare thing and like a super special thing. Like maybe it's a Matt Hardy thing, or maybe it's a Bray Wyatt thing, but I can't see them doing a bunch of these pre-tape matches because yes, while what they're doing in the arena is catering to mostly the television audience, and if you've ever been to a live Raw or SmackDown, you know that very well, that what they're doing is catered to the millions watching at home rather than the 10 or 15,000 that are there in person. But I just feel like if there was 10 or 15,000 people in person having to watch a 10, 15, 20-minute match on the Titantron, I just can't see that going over that well.
No. Yeah. You mentioned it earlier that you're basically going more YouTube, doing freelance stuff. What are those goals that you talked about earlier? Your specific goals that you're setting for yourself now?
Well, I like this. I like where you're going with this. So it was 250,000 subscribers on YouTube, which I actually got like a few months ago. So that was great. I'm at 260 now. So I think 300 is a good goal to strive for. But if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't know if it's possible in the next 5 months. But I'll say it, 300,000. I moved to Los Angeles because I wanted to really pursue things with hosting and acting. So I'd like to host a national show again. That's high on my priority list. And I don't mean a wrestling show, though if it is a wrestling show, great. But I'd love to host a show on like a Netflix or I don't know, like a Discovery Channel or even network television. That's something that is a specific goal. I'm working towards this. And I've done a few movies, very, very small roles in some movies, but that's something I really enjoy. So I've been talking with an acting coach, and I want to dive into that world. So these are the specific goals. I'm throwing them out there, making myself accountable for them so we can watch this back in a year and go,
no, what was he thinking?
This guy, this is still not even at 300,000.
Acting. Oh, he's crazy.
Yeah, this guy. Come on. I've also been diving a lot more into the podcasting world. I take the audio from all my YouTube interviews and make it available on my podcast. And that gets very addictive because Apple releases their charts like several times a day, the charts update. So I've been looking at the charts and being like, like this is, I'm only a year into the podcasting, and like, I'm up there with like Jericho and JR. Like I'm at like 15 or 20 on the list, but I'm like, that's pretty good. So that's another thing that I'm really putting a lot of efforts into, is doing more of the podcasting.
Hard work and passion is what I take out of you. And I mean, you could put your mind to anything, I think, and set those goals. And
we all can, right?
Yes, we all can. We all try, you know.
And thank you for saying that. I just have a lot of drive. Like I don't want to be like 114 years old. Actually, I plan on living longer than that, but I don't want to be like 114 years old and look back and be like, oh man, when I was in my 30s, I really wish I'd done this, this, and this, which will then lead to, oh man, when I was in my 40s, why didn't I do this and this? And I just don't want to live my life on the what ifs.
Yeah.
I'd rather just go, oh, that person's doing the thing that I want to do. Oh, cool. That means I can also do that thing.
Yeah, I agree. Now, before we wrap up this conversation, you have 4 Emmys. And I
have 2 of them here.
I saw them. Do you name your Emmys?
I should, right? I just call them Emmy, right?
You should. They should all have different names.
Emmy. I mean, Emmy's a name.
Emmy's a good name. I guess it works. And we said you've been voted most eligible bachelor. You have all these accolades. Who the hell is John Alba?
Yeah. Who's John Alba?
Right.
So on Twitter, he challenged me to a match. I'll put my 1 Emmy on the line against any one of your Emmys. I'm like, well, but if you lose, now you have no Emmys.
Now he has none.
If I lose, I still have 3 Emmys.
Yeah.
So
And he was in the chat earlier before you came on, and he said, and I quote, he said, tell him and a wrestler of his choosing, you and a wrestler, let's do it. And I was like, all right, well, I'll ask him. I'll see what he says. I know Colin West from Synergy. He's ready to book it. The ref Ryan T says he's ready to ref it. What do you think?
Well, I don't want to embarrass John. John already.
Well, he's got 1
himself.
Emmy and you have 4. So I think you've already done that.
Well, right. So John already embarrasses himself with everything that he does. So I don't want to get into a ring and make him look even worse than he already does. So if this thing ends up happening one day, I feel sorry for John because he's a loser and he's going to lose. I don't know what that was.
That was good though. That was Chris. That was Chris Sharp.
I slipped in a little Chris Sharp there.
Yeah,
I haven't been Chris Sharp in like 18 years.
Right. What I like to do at the end of every show is I'm going to give you the proverbial mic. It's your time. Although you've done a phenomenal job.
Here we are. I got a mic.
There you go. You got a nice mic. Excellent. You can say whatever you want. You can put over whatever you want. Bury anything. I don't care what you say. I will not interrupt. The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, I just want to thank you for taking the time. I'm super grateful that someone like you even wants to speak with me. I mean, this is crazy that people reach out and say, can we have you as a guest on our show? I'm the one used to asking questions. So thank you for having me on. Thank you to anyone who's watching this, who's ever clicked on one of my videos or listened to one of my podcasts. I'm just a wrestling fan like everybody else. And I just took this to another level and decided it'd be fun to talk to wrestlers. So all I really got to say is I got 2 words for you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have yourself.
Those are the 2 words. Thank you.
Yes, I got it. And mine are you're welcome. You're extremely inspirational. And that was one of the reasons I definitely wanted to have you on. So,
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
Wow.
So, have yourself a wonderful night with your 4 Emmys. And we'll enjoy your interview with EY tomorrow.
Yeah, I will. I'm so excited about that. I've got a bunch of interviews lined up. I just figure if we're all going to be in this together, which we are right now.
Yes, we are.
I might as well do as many as I can. So I actually have a fascinating interview with Muhammad Hassan that's going to be coming out on Thursday.
Nice.
And I think he's only done like 2 or 3 interviews since leaving wrestling 15 years ago.
Oh, I know what I forgot to touch on.
Oh, please.
How does Tyler Perry get you an interview with John Cena?
Wow, you really did do your research on this.
I did.
So long story short, I've interviewed Tyler Perry so many times that we became friends.
Right.
And he actually asked if I could audition for one of the TV shows he had just written. And I auditioned and it just didn't work out with the TV show that I was working on in Miami. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of outside stuff, but we stayed in touch. And he's been so supportive of me in my career. In fact, I was talking to him on my drive to LA last week, and he's just like, man, I'm so proud of you. You're carving your own path. You're doing this thing. And when I was telling him about my YouTube channel, he goes, would you ever want to interview John Cena? Like, yeah, of course I would want to interview John Cena. I've interviewed him before for like movies, but it's been, really quick interviews. He goes, oh, okay, well, John's a friend of mine. I'll see if he wants to do it. I'm like, oh, cool. Thinking like that would be the end of this.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, Tyler texts me a screenshot of the conversation he had with John. And John's like, yeah, I'll do it like at WrestleMania. And I'm like, wow. So that's how it came together.
Wow.
Tyler Perry is such a kind, supportive man. And he's friends with John Cena. And it honestly came down to Tyler Perry asked John Cena, who was kind enough to say yes. That was it.
That is a good story, though. That's great. I definitely didn't want to leave that one out. All right, now we're officially done. You have yourself a wonderful night, and we'll be in touch. And, good luck tomorrow, and we'll see you around.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said, I got 2 words for you. Thank you.
Awesome. That was awesome, Vanessa. Good job. Oh,
thank you guys.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
All right. Well, have a good night. If you need anything,
Yeah,
let
you
me
too.
know.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Be well.
Yep. That was great.
He makes me want to wake up tomorrow and do something.
Right? Right?
This guy's called the Standing Streamer.
Zane from Wrestling with Regret, and you're watching Putting You Over.